So this is a quick little video to show you a technique you can use to get macro shots without having to buy a macro lens. And this is a technique that doesn't limit you to a shallow depth of field like a lot of these other techniques on YouTube do. Now before we begin, a quick little caveat. While you don't have to buy a macro lens, you do have to buy something, and that's one of these. It's a little plastic extension tube. They're very cheap. You can pick them up on eBay or Amazon. They cost a few pounds or a few dollars. They're really worth having. You put one end on your camera body and the lens on the other end, and it moves the lens slightly away from the sensor, which enables that lens to get much closer than it would be able to shoot normally. Besides that, all you're going to need is a camera, a lens, some way to hold your camera like a tripod, and something that you want to shoot very close up. So I'm going to be shooting this with my 5D and my 24-70 lens, and while this says macro on it, it's not actually a proper macro lens. It can get about that close, but I want to be right up that close. So one of the problems with the lenses on contemporary cameras is when you take off a lens, it defaults to wide open, and you don't want that because that will give you an extremely shallow depth of field. I want to take the lens off and have it at the smallest aperture it's capable of. So what I'm going to do, this works for Canon lenses. I don't know if it works for other brands. If it doesn't, it's not the end of the world. You can still use this technique. It's just going to be a little bit more in depth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it to f22, which is the smallest that this one will go to. I'm going to press the depth of field preview button, and while holding that down, I'm going to press the lens release button, and I'm going to turn the lens. Now that's disconnected, so I'm going to turn the camera off, and then I take the lens off. But if you can see there, what we've got is a very, very small aperture, which is exactly what we want. So this step involves putting the lens back on the camera body, but with the macro tube in between. It's very simple. I'm just going to attach the tube to the camera body and then match up the dots, attach the lens onto the tube. And it's just mounted on like a regular lens, but with this tube in between. So now I've got the camera mounted on a tripod with the macro tube on. I've put a rose down here, and I've put a few drops of water on it with a little syringe just to give it a bit of texture. And because it's very, very dark looking through a very tiny aperture, what I'm doing is I've used a little light as well, just to give it a bit of extra light and just to make those drops glow a little bit. So I've determined that ISO 100 and 1/8 of a second is a good exposure for this. So I'm going to focus right at the front, as far forward as I want the plane of focus to start, and I'm going to shoot with a timer set for 2 seconds so that I can move away from the camera to stop any camera shake. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a series of shots, each time focusing slightly further back until I've reached the point of focus as far back as I want to be my depth of field. So here we go. So now I've got all my images, I'm going to bring them into Photoshop and show you how we stack them together to get one single image. So now I've imported my images onto the computer and I've opened Photoshop, and I'm going to go to File, Automate, Photo Merge. I'm going to browse my files. Here are my files. I'm going to select them all and click Open. Now you want to uncheck Blend Images Together. Click OK. So here we've got all the images we've taken aligned and layered on top of each other. This image here is the first image where the focal point is right at the front. And as we move to the bottom image, the point of focus has gone right to the back around here. So what you want to do now is select all your layers, go to Edit and Auto Blend Layers. Make sure Stack Images is checked and click OK. So what Photoshop's doing now is it's going through each layer to find out where the depth of field is on each one. It's going to mask those and layer them all up to create one in-focus image. And there we go, that's looking really nice. We've got sharpness at the front, sharpness at the back, and everything sharp in between. Zoom into 100%. Yeah, looking really good there. And that is how to get macro shots without a macro lens.